Let's recap and react to Penn State's demonstrative win against Southern Methodist and talk about what this game was, what this game wasn't, and frankly, who's to blame as Penn State is going to get to play against Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl. What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. If this is your first time watching the #1 college football show, please subscribe to the channel and like this video. But when you subscribe, ring the bell so you don't miss any of the segments that we upload here. We react to games as they end. We react to news as it happens. It's a college football analytical news network of its own, right? But it's also just kind of a fun podcast that we do here at Fox Sports. I want to talk about Penn State and Southern Methodist. This game was over in the first half, and you all know why. Kevin Jennings had one of the worst games of his entire life in Happy Valley. He threw 2 pick sixes and 3 interceptions in the first half alone. It led to a 14-0 lead where it felt like Penn State was doing everything in its power offensively to let SMU back into the game. We have James Franklin going for it inside of his own 50 deep, turning the ball over. It doesn't matter. They get the ball back. We got Tony Rojas having a game of games. Wherever the ball is, Kevin Jennings is there. And then we got Abdul Carter absolutely beating the hell out of left tackle at SMU. Kevin Jennings is running for his life. He's not making it that much easier on himself. Brashard Smith couldn't do much in the run game. And before long, we're watching the dam break as both Katron Allen and Nick Singleton ended up doing what they normally do. They combined for 160 yards on the ground. Nick Singleton going for nearly 100. Katron Allen got it going a little bit later on. And Drew Allard didn't need to do much, right? He threw for less than 150 yards again. Would this classify as a big win for Penn State and Drew Allard, Nick Singleton, that class? I think it has to because it's a college football playoff game. It's also at home. But we're going to get to find out more about them when they play Boise State, a team that they frankly should beat. I get that Ashton Janty is good, and I get that Boise State defense is good. Madsen can make it happen. I think Boise State's the same caliber of football team that Southern Methodist is, which is where the conversation around this game really goes, right? We don't really talk about the football that was played in Notre Dame, Indiana. We don't really talk about the football that was played in Penn State Southern Methodist because it was underwhelming. We were bored by it. We wanted to see more competitive games, and that is as it's always going to be. I understand the argument that there aren't 12 teams that are all going to be great and good enough to play for the national championship game, but you have to do this, especially when you got it in the NFL. Teams can have losing records and make the playoffs, and then they can get beat like a drum, or they can be pretty good and make the playoffs and get beat by like a drum. It happens, right? That's what tournaments are about. I think piss moaning and complaining about the caliber of football that was played is beside the point, right? We can make the argument that Indiana was in this thing because they beat up on a bunch of bad teams. We could say the same thing about Southern Methodist. We could argue about Miami getting that spot or Ole Miss getting that spot or even Alabama getting that spot. But I think make the conference championship game and then whine and complain. Or if you're Indiana, you go 11-1, your only loss is to a top 6 Ohio State, and you're Alabama and you lose to 6-6 Oklahoma. You've got nothing to complain about, right? I think that that's all on you because all Alabama had to do was make the SEC championship game, and we're talking about them making the college football playoff. I also think that, Texas is just as easily in the Penn State spot, but nobody's going to make that argument about Texas, even though Texas's resume ain't that much better than Penn State's and ain't that much better than Indiana's. However, how we got here is how we always wanted to get here, right? The thought that there aren't 12 teams good enough to make the college football playoff is beside the point. The point is that we needed a playoff, right? And for 150 years, we didn't have one, right? And now that we do have a 12-team playoff, I'm not going to get upset because the first 2 games that we played happened to be blowout wins by the home team. That's how these things usually go, especially in our sport where home field advantage is unlike any other home field advantage in any sport ever. If you are getting to host one of these games, you are the favorite going away, and you have a fan base that, 1, is experiencing this for the first time, and 2, shows up for you when you play nobody. And for Penn State, this field felt a lot like their game 2022 against Auburn, where they beat Auburn like a drum, right? They scored 40+ on them. That's not the challenge for Penn State. The challenge for Penn State is beating teams that got a 5, a 4, a 3, a 2, or a 1 next to their name. That is where they falter. That is where they fail. I don't expect the team that played Oregon to a one-score game on a neutral site to get into a dogfight with Southern Methodist at home. It's just not how that goes. Did I expect Kevin Jennings to play as piss poor as he did? No. Did I expect Rhett Lashlee to make some questionable play calls? No. Did I expect Andy Kotelnicki to make some questionable play calls? Absolutely I did, because that's just who that guy has been the whole time. He's going to do too much. He's going to play these gadget plays. But Drew Aller decided in this game, when he had to make plays with his legs, he was gonna. And I got to see something a little bit different out of Drew Aller in this win. I got to see him have a little bit of stroke to him. I saw a little fury in him. I saw emotion from him. And then he was feasting, right, off the defense that was able to get him the ball back and really stop SMU doing anything that they ever wanted to do. I, quite frankly, was enthusiastic about this game because I wanted to see what Penn State was going to do with the home game. And they did what a glorified independent is going to do, just like Notre Dame, right? They ran over a team that they are better than. Are they better than Boise State? I think so. That's the number 9 team in the country, but even if they're the 3 seed, that's not a top 5 team. They've got one player that you really got to bottle up. And then let's see if Maddox Madsen can beat that Tom Allen defense. I don't think he can. I think Abdul Carter is going to make himself known. I think Kobe King is going to make himself known. And you don't have at your disposal the same kind of offensive speed and tempo that SMU did. When SMU was going fast to start the game, it was clear that Penn State was not conditioned for it. They were all over the map. Kobe King was puking against Oregon. They weren't able to get lined up. They like to be able to line up and power at you. But as soon as they were able to get in the backfield, it didn't matter anymore, because you can't go fast when your quarterback is running for his life and he is getting hit on the ground, especially when you're throwing pick sixes. When Penn State's offense doesn't have to score for them to win football games, that's a really difficult team to beat. The issue becomes, can that offense score with everybody else? We thought that they could, and we think they can because of what they were able to do against Oregon on a neutral site, which is the only time they're ever going to see Oregon again would be a neutral site this game, or this season. I'm more interested now in what the game plan will look like, because James Franklin is already saying we're selling out against SMU. All I want to talk about is SMU. I'm up there behind going, you got 65 plays to get to the next game. Can they keep that mentality the same way? Because one of the things that I get upset about hearing is coaches saying, we're playing this game, we're going one game at a time. Well, we all got going one game at a time. That's one day at a time. That's how we all do it, right? But when we're talking about what the future's going to hold, you ain't got to act like we stupid, right? We understand that you have to win this football game. But can your focus just be on that football game as you're heading toward December 31st? It has to be. But what else is going to be going on around that is how we're talking about your team and how your fan base is talking about your team and how Boise State feels about being able to be the home team in the Fiesta Bowl. I don't think it's going to matter that much, but I also think James Franklin has to win in a way that Ryan Day has to win. We are challenging your credibility now, which is a thing that people love to challenge with me. But when you look at his background, you look at his resume, he's going to show you 9-10 wins every year. He's just not going to be able to show you wins against top 5 teams. For Ryan Day, it's going to be showing you a lack of wins against Michigan and no national championships. Both of those programs have opportunities to really reset the narrative, and Penn State has done that. Ohio State gets a chance to do that against Tennessee a little bit later on this afternoon. I still think that Penn State has more to show, especially offensively. And I don't think that Drew Aller is going to be able to win you a national championship throwing for less than 150 yards. I think somebody somewhere is going to have a secondary that is going to force this, and a front that's going to force this out of Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. They're going to find a way to stop you doing what you want to do. It's, can Andy Kotelnicki put Drew Aller, for that matter, Tyler Warren, and guys like Trey Wallace, Harrison Wallace III, into situations where they can win. So we'll see. But for now, Penn State moves on. We'll argue about whether or not SMU and Indiana need to be there, but for the time being, the Blue Bloods are doing what the Blue Bloods do.